You've probably joined us today because of the title of today's show. This is Omuugn on what I learned from raising 19 kids. Oh, this is going to be a great, exciting episode today. I'm Angela Brown, and I'm here today with Omuugn, who actually happens to be my dad. And we are reading from the Insights and Wisdom of Omuugn. And this is book one in a two-part series of all of the different insights. And I'll share this with you. These are insights he learned while parenting 19 kids. So today he's going to give us the inside scoop about some of the things that he learned. And oh my goodness, maybe you will learn something too. I know. I'm going to ask that you take notes because there's probably something that will hit you today in a way that you might never have looked at it before. And if that happens, I want you to say, aha. I don't want you to judge it. I just want you to listen. And then later, as you're out walking your dog or you're fixing breakfast, you can be thinking about this over and over and figure out how it applies to you and how you might tweak it a little bit so that it fits your lifestyle. So this is some free advice. This is advice from a master and a pro at parenting. And I want to help me welcome to this conversation today to share his insights with us, Omuugn. How are you today?
I'm really well. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I am really excited about today's conversation. This is the third time we've revisited the topic on families, and there's so much to cover.
Well, the reason that families is so important is that it touches almost every facet of our lives. And we could really spend a lot of time on families. We could have several other sessions, and I don't know how deeply we want to go. But a wise man once said, no other success can compensate for failure in the home. And we see that, I think, in the world today where billionaires are getting divorced and kind of restructuring their families because they have not been successful in putting their family together. And it doesn't matter how much wealth and resource you have. That isn't really what creates a good family. A good family is built upon universal laws and foundational principles. And if we apply those, then we have a good chance of having a very successful family.
Well, I want to say thanks to those of you that are joining us today. We have a Facebook user that says hi. We have another Facebook user that says hi this morning from the West Coast. Hi, good morning from the East Coast and the West Coast. And another Facebook user says good morning. So I'm glad you guys have joined us today and thank you. On page 229 of the Insights and Wisdom from Omuugn, he says, keep a journal of interesting and funny things that family members say. Share with us a little bit about why you feel that is important.
Well, while we were living life was just so busy and the demands were so pressing all of the time that I actually failed to document everything. And the more things that you document, the more memory you have of those items that will go through your life with you. A lot of those things were lessons and a lot of things were just funny. Children, when they learn to talk and they're trying to put their world together when they're 3 or 4 or 5 years old, they say the darndest things and the funniest things. And it would just be really fun to record all of those things and to share with them at a later time what their perspective was when they were just 3 or 4 years old. Because sometimes they'll say things and use words that, like I think he was maybe 3, a little grandson. And I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, I want to be a paleontologist. And that was really funny coming from a little 3-year-old. So yeah, just record things that are cute and funny that you want to remember. It's really important.
I want to highlight that with technology now, we have Google, and Google Photos allows you to upload photos on a daily basis, and you can connect it so that it automatically goes from your phone to the Google Photos. And you can also record those funny moments on your phone and also save those videos. and Google indexes by date all of those different excursions. And I know that right now on my phone, every single morning, it will send me a reminder of this is what you did 5 years ago today or 8 years ago today. And it's kind of a fun way to just automatically be reminded of those happy memories that you created as a family. So I love that idea. That's a great idea. All
It
right, the
really is.
next one. The next one is pick up after yourself and teach children the value of order and responsibility. I know you were really big on this growing up. Tell us why a child should have chores growing up and why that's so important.
Well, there are certain habits and disciplines that go with you throughout life, no matter where you are. If you go off to college and you're living in a bachelor or bachelorette apartment, or if you're in a place where you are the maid and you are everything, you're living on your own, you need to have certain skills and habits that make your life better. And picking things up, putting them away, keeping your laundry current, having a place for everything, those are just important skills to learn. And a home runs a lot smoother if you need something and you know right where it is. I don't believe in being OCD where everything has to just be perfect and in order all of the time and the towels just have to be straight. But if you want a towel or if you want a wash rag, you should know where they are and they should be in that place and they should be folded up. It doesn't have to be perfectly square or anything, but it's accessible and it's nice. Don't spend your life looking for things. Don't spend your life tripping over things. And if parents do that, it's a good example for the children. And if the parents insist that the children do it, it's a habit that they learn. And some people are just kind of naturally sloppy. They're just kind of naturally carefree and they just throw things around. That's not a habit that you want to go through life with. And so you should be aware of how your children behave in all kinds of situations. And if you see a habit that can be improved, then improve it and identify it and teach the child and work on it until it becomes a good habit. It's important.
I remember when I was young, you took me aside one day because I had stepped over something. And you took me aside, you put your hand on my shoulder and you said, Angela. Angela is a derivative of the name angel, and angels don't step over things. They stop and pick them up. And interestingly enough, I remember that all of my life. As I've tried to step over something, I'm like, angels don't step over things. They stop and pick things up. And it was funny because that was one of those little sound bites that just stuck with me forever. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we see a lot of things. For example, if you're driving somewhere, you'll see garbage on the side of the road where people will eat something and just throw the wrapper out the window or throw the can out the window. You'll go to a state park to enjoy maybe a day at the lake or something, and there'll be garbage around in the park. And there are people who just don't have those habits of being disciplined to put things away and in the proper place. And our country would be just a lot more beautiful from the city, community, state, nationwide if everyone picked up after themselves and put things away. It's just a good habit that everyone should have.
And I want to highlight the fact that you and mom, growing up, when we would go to a park as a family to have a picnic, mom would always bring a broom. And when we were done, she had us run around and pick up all the garbage and any garbage that we left behind and any garbage anyone else left behind. And then we would sweep out the pavilion before we left so we could leave it cleaner than when we found it. And that was an interesting lesson that also stuck with me the duration of my existence.
Yeah, if we were to put that into an axiom, we would say, leave every place better than you found it. Every place.
That's nice. I also want to highlight while we're on this topic that one of the reasons you expressed to us as children growing up that it was important that we have jobs because many of our friends did not have jobs or chores around the house. And you said, we are a community here and we live here as a family unit. And everybody has their own responsibilities as part of that family unit. And so if you would like to stay here, you're welcome to stay, but there are rules that you have to follow. And one of them is you have a job, you have to contribute and give something back. And I thought that was a really interesting lesson because it always taught me that there was responsibility for where you live, not just move in and leech off of someone and not contribute in some sort of way.
Yeah, it's just a basic fundamental principle that always applies.
Well, it's a really good one. I'm glad you included it in your book. You wrote in here, make your home a place of refuge from the world. What did you mean by that?
Well, there's so many things that impinge upon us today. There's so many people that are protesting, and there's so many people that are angry about everything. You can't pick a topic where you can't find people that are angry about it for one reason or another. There are a lot of political divisions. There's a lot of propaganda in our news. Our world is just full of ideas and words and things that we need to isolate ourselves from. And so our home is a place where that takes place, ideally. Our home should be a place of refuge where when we're overburdened with things that are happening outside, we can come home and find peace and tranquility and support and love and encouragement and all of the good things that you look forward to in life. That should be your home. You should not come home to arguing and fighting and quarreling and people can't get along with each other and your place is a mess and the sink is full of dirty dishes and there's chaos in your home. That's really a bad place to be.
Mhm.
And so if we organize ourselves and discipline ourselves and have rules and we need to sit down and say, what would I like my home to be ideally? If I lived in the perfect home, the perfect surroundings, the perfect environment, how would I interact with people that I love ideally? And if you can define those things for yourself, then why don't you just create that space for yourself? Because we have the power to do that.
That's so good. So good. All right, you have one here that says use and teach your children to use magic words like please and thank you.
Everyone has their own belief system, and everyone wants to be able to express themselves and be free. And we need to respect people to allow them to do that. And using words like please and thank you is not demanding, but it communicates what you would like to have done in a way that a person can respond to that with their freedom and their agency. So when you say, would you please do this or please do that, or if you have time, if you could do this, this would really be beneficial to me. Instead of be demanding and work on people's nerves, we can just kind of put oil and honey on the things that we say to people, which imbues everything with positive energy. You have to be very sensitive whether your energy is negative or positive. And a lot of people don't realize that their tone of voice is also important. If you say, would you please hand me the salt? It doesn't convey a message where if you said, would you please hand me the salt? We have to be aware of our tone. Sometimes we become so habituated in the way we speak and the way we communicate that we're not really aware of how we come across to other people. Some people do things that really kind of grind on us, and it's like eating with your mouth open. You're not aware of it because you can't see your own mouth open, but someone sitting across from you would experience that. So it's being aware of other people, of their feelings, respecting their individuality, and putting positive energy into our communications. Thank you for helping me. Thank you for whatever the chore might be.
We have a Facebook user that says, "You are amazing with showing us respect as kids to say please and thank you and teaching us polite manners." So I'm guessing this is one of your children that have joined us. So hello, child, that have joined us. I want to add something to that, and that's really important, where you say the way that you express yourself is important, because there's another way to express yourself that doesn't include clear communication. And it's passive aggressive ways of saying things like, well, I wish I had some salt. Okay, that doesn't empower anyone to want to pass you the salt. And when you say, please, would you pass me the salt? That makes someone want to help you. And I think making somebody want to help you comes from being crystal clear about what the end objective is. Because when somebody just says, well, I wish I had some salt, well, I wish you did too. Why don't you get some? Right? I mean, it makes you it makes you defensive and not inspired to help them. So I love the way that you're using the magic words, please and thank you, which are kind, polite words. They're free. Anyone can use them, tweaking the conversation a little bit to include the communication. Another version of that is mixed communication that doesn't end up where they want at all, like reading minds. Like if you look at the salt and then do like this with your head, that doesn't mean please pass me the salt. And I've seen many people that are like, why didn't you pass me the salt? I looked at it and I like moved my head. That's not clear communication, right? So I love that you're bringing it back to focus, make it simple, keep it easy, use please and thank you, and be clear about your directives so that you get what the end result, and both of you know that you've achieved it.
And there's another element here too that I think is really important, and that is you'll hear people say something like, I'm frustrated because my house is always messy, or I don't have room to put this anywhere. I don't have a place for this. And they just use negative terms in their speech. Well, it isn't that you don't have a place for things, it's that you haven't selected a place for something yet. So we need to be very, very careful not to use negative terms. It limits us, it programs us. We're saying things like, I always bump my shin on this bed frame or something. Well, do something about that. Don't always bump your shin on something. And if you say, I always bump my shin on something, you probably will, because that's the program that you have running. So learn to crouch everything into positive terms. How can you say something positive instead of saying, you always yell at me, and if you talk kindly to me, I would respond differently, you know? Well, that's approaching someone kind of negatively.
I
Whereas
I,
I was going to say,
I go ahead.
go ahead, you go ahead.
I was listening to a psychologist on a podcast the other day, and I cannot remember the life of me for where it came from and who said it. But it was that same concept when you said, I'm always bumping my shin on the bedpost or something. Instead of arguing, or instead of saying, well, go do something about it, or instead of not knowing what to say, they always ask this question. And the question is, would you like to be heard? Would you like to be helped? Or would you like to be hugged? And those three questions oftentimes will make them stop and say, well, wait a second, I would like to be helped. Okay, let's put a cushion around the bedpost. Or they just say, I want to be heard. Okay, great. Tell me your troubles. And then they can go ahead and spew as long as they want. So I decided to try this on my husband one day when I was stumped for an answer. I said, would you like to be hugged? Would you like to be heard? Or would you like to be helped? And he said, I would like to be hugged. And I said, okay, good. Let's hug it out. So he didn't really want to complain, and he didn't really want to be helped. When he stopped and thought about it, he's like, I just want a hug. I'm like, okay, that was easy. But I think there's merit to that. When you have clear communication and the other person knows what your role in their communication is, it also gives you permission to have role in that communication as well. And you can either help them, hear them, or hug them.
It's amazing how often we hear negative terms or negative tones or we experience negative energy. So if someone is maybe raising their voice to an uncomfortable level at you, Instead of saying, you always scream at me, or I don't like it when you do this, or whatever. You could say, when you talk softly to me, I really do appreciate it. Learn to say things in just a positive way to communicate the same idea. Uh, if someone says something negative to you, you don't want to correct them by being negative to them.
Mhm.
That's two negatives. You want to turn everything around and make everything positive energy. People like to be loved and appreciated and recognized, and when you show them that respect, it goes a long way. Don't criticize people and use negative terms with them, and don't think negative terms. When you're thinking and going over things in your own mind, I don't have enough money to do this. I don't have the resources. I can't do this. I can't. We can get caught up in just a whole bunch of negativity. Turn everything around and make it positive. We live in a world, a universe full of resources.
Speaking of universe and a world full of resources, you wrote in your book, let your life and your family life center in God and divine reality. Let your life and your family life center in God and divine reality. Tell us about that.
Well, I see family as being in layers. And the first layer is our connection with the divine. It's a spiritual atmosphere, it's a spiritual quality that should permeate everything that we do. And on top of that, then we begin to love people and we begin to respect people. And then we begin to educate people and teach people. And then we're examples for people. And we build all kinds of layers on that layer. If you try to build a family, in my opinion, without a spiritual dimension, then I think you're losing the most important thing that pertains to your family. And we live in a world that's really kind of strange. We have all kinds of religions and all kinds of philosophies and all kinds of belief systems. So I think we need to scrutinize all of those. Why do you believe what you do? Were you raised in this belief system, or is that what you really believe? And we will all have our own interests. We will all experience things as we research and study things that interest us. I don't think we can confine spirituality to a religion or uh, a denomination or something like that. It's more pervasive than that. The Creator created everything, and it applies to everything. It applies to everyone, everywhere. And so, whatever religion you are, it shouldn't be just an habitual thing or a surface thing. We should move into our heart center and into our mind and into a place where we love the creation, we love the Creator, we appreciate all of the things that have been provided for us. So, yeah, that's the basis, really, the foundational layer for the family. If you don't have that, you don't have anything. No other success can compensate for a failure to incorporate the divine in your life perspective, in your
Wow.
belief system.
Wow. All right, more insights. Wow, that was awesome. You have here, speaking of God, love, and nature, you have a thought in here that says, garden and teach children to garden. We learn many valuable lessons working in harmony with nature.
Gardening is a wonderful area to teach children all kinds of things. And in today's world, my word, they're poisoning our air, our water, our food. Our food is filled with insecticides and pesticides and herbicides and other sides. Uh, if you can grow your own food, you know exactly what you're getting. You can amend the soil and put the mycorrhiza in the soil, and you can compost. I have raised garden beds and a greenhouse And I have made all of the soil in all of those things. I don't garden in dirt. I compost things and put compost on everything that I do. And I think we should teach our children those ecological things, how things grow, how they're nourished, how they support our belief system and our lifestyle. Um, I believe that we should eat as much raw as we can.
Mm.
I think that we should have our own green leafy vegetables. I grow citrus. I have 20 citrus trees in
Mm.
eastern Oregon. I have to take them inside. They're in big pots. But we have lemons and limes all year round. And we grow our own grapes and our own blackberries. We had about 35 gallons of blackberries last year.
Wow.
And we make sugarless jams and jellies, and we have blackberry juice, and we mix juices together for our smoothies. And it's just a lot of fun to grow your own things and produce crops that are, for example, we make our own apple cider. We have apple trees and we pick our apples and then we make our own apple cider. And it's fun to drink apple cider that you've made yourself. And we take apple cider and we put it aside, and we actually turn that into apple cider vinegar. And so we have apple cider vinegar that's all homemade and really, really delicious. And so there's
Well,
so many.
I'm hearing what you're saying is a lot of probiotics and antioxidants and all of the
Oh,
nutrients that we actually
absolutely.
need for our bodies.
Absolutely. Yeah, the more you get into health and diet and what's really nutritious and good and healthy for you, all of those things are important. And for a child to grow up learning how to do all of those things, how to prune, how to plant and care for, water and weed, and do all of the things that are necessary in a garden, and how to produce bigger and better crops all of the time. Uh, I think I mentioned in a prior podcast, but this year, I didn't really know about it, but we introduced biochar into our garden this year, where you take charcoal and you infuse the charcoal with mycorrhiza and bacteria that's very beneficial for the soil. And the biochar doesn't break down in the soil. If you put charcoal into your garden, it stays there for like 100 years.
Mm.
It just always becomes part of that. And so I'm always constantly learning new things and how to do the garden better, how to make it more nutritious, how to grow crops that are bigger and tastier. And it's just a fun thing to do. It occupies children. It teaches them all kinds of disciplines. It makes them healthy. It makes them aware of eating a good diet. And they're apt to eat more of a good diet if they're raising the food themselves. Instead of just buying corn crunchies at the store, you grow things. For example, we grow our own wheat. We had a source of it's called King Tut, and its origin was out of the pyramids in Egypt. And the kernels of the wheat are so big that it won't go through our wheat grinder. We have to actually crack the wheat in our blender to get the kernels small enough to put them in our wheat grinder to grind the wheat.
Wow.
But we have our own natural wheat, and there's a big problem in the nation today of gluten intolerance. And the genetically modified wheat that they're producing today is 3 times higher in gluten than in natural wheat. And so we would have a lot less diseases and allergies and all kinds of situations if we would use wholesome organic produce that we grow ourselves. It's just a much, much better way to live, in my opinion. So,
Well, and
yeah, I think,
I know also that teaching children to garden, not just, I mean, aside from the health benefits, not just only for health, but it also taught responsibility as far as patience, planting a seed, waiting for it to grow, helping it grow by watering it, pulling weeds, all the different things that come with making sure that a garden is maintained. And as a child growing up under your roof, those are the values that I learned from gardening. And so that was a really great learning experience that stuff can grow on its own, but it's going to do a lot better if you are managing it by pulling weeds and watering it and staying on top of it.
And I'd like to mention one other thing that I think is really important. As I look at I have 19 children, and as I look at their families, to a very marked degree, they are all considering very carefully what they eat. As I look into the diets of the families, I see health foods, and I see green drinks, and I see salads and healthy things. In our society today, there's so much cereal that's highly processed. There's so much of our food injected with high fructose corn syrup or sugar substitutes, things that are really unhealthy for us. And so I see some of my own children, they do canning and preserving of their own food. They're growing gardens, many of them. And I just see a lot of that awareness in their lives, in their families. It's kind of a tradition or a legacy that's passed down through our family to grow gardens and produce good food and teach your children to do that. The food that your children eat when they're little, that's the food that they will eat all through their lives. That's what they will really enjoy. And I don't remember us ever going out and just buying candy to feed the family, because candy is just, in my mind, was never a good idea. So we would find other treats, maybe raisins or some dried prunes or little carrots or whatever it might be. We learned to snack on different things that were healthy. So yeah, those are important lessons for a child to learn.
Well, since you brought up the candy thing, I need to tell you that one time there was a Halloween event, and there were a bunch of homeschoolers that were involved. And there was no candy per se, but there was like little sesame seed horehound candy or whatever you call it. It was the nastiest tasting stuff made with molasses and sesame seeds. I'm like, you know what? I'd rather not have any if this means candy, because this is not candy. It was nasty and it was awful. So maybe it's better that we didn't go down that candy route. I'm telling you. All right. There's another one here that says everyone needs to be loved, praised, and appreciated. Tell me why that's important as you raise children.
Those are basic human needs. If people feel loved and nourished and appreciated, it makes all the difference in the world. A lot of companies are finding out that instead of just giving your employees more money, higher wages, that if they really show appreciation and pat them on the back and say, you're doing an amazing job. If people are appreciated, they tend to interact with you in a much better way. There are a lot of people who hate their job. They hate doing whatever it is they're doing. And a lot of that stems from not being appreciated, not feeling like you're really contributing to something that matters. So if you communicate that to people, everyone likes to have a hug. You put your arm around somebody and say, I'm sure glad you showed up today. Tell that to your kids. Sure glad you got out of bed today. It's a beautiful day. Let's go out to the garden and get something done. And tell people that their garden is beautiful. Tell them that you appreciate their room being clean. Tell them that it was so wonderful that you just pitched in and helped doing the dishes last night after supper. Praise them for everything. Let people know that you really, really do appreciate them being around and that you love them, and hug them. And yeah, those are just, everybody needs that. Everybody does.
The next part of that is another insight that says learn to communicate effectively with people and not argue, especially in the home. Share with me about arguments in the home. It would be tough to have 19 kids and not a lot of arguments.
At one time, we went to see a movie called Cheaper by the Dozen. And I think they had 12 children. And to make the movie interesting, they would have big pillow fights, and you'd see feathers flying all over the room. And at their meal times, they'd throw food at each other, and it was just chaos all of the time. That's really not how families need to be at all. We taught our children not to fight, not to quarrel, that our home was a refuge. Uh, show respect to people, learn to interact with people in a positive way. I mean, there were just some standard basic principles that were taught, and I think it worked really, really well. So nobody likes to live in a place where there's just chaos all of the time.
So the no fighting rule stands.
Yeah, we didn't tolerate yelling. We didn't tolerate arguing. We didn't tolerate any real negative interaction. We would sit people down and say, wow, this is not going over very well. Have you thought that we might do this instead? Or why don't you play with this toy for 10 minutes and then we'll let Joey play with it for 10 minutes and we'll trade off, and it can be done. We can negotiate this thing so that everybody's happy. You just have to teach those principles.
I do remember as a child learning negotiation, and it was good and it was bad. It was good because we all got along as kids. It was bad because when I moved away from home, whenever someone else would say, no, we're doing it my way this time, I was like, okay. And I realized in one relationship that I had after I moved away from home, I was being walked all over in a metaphorical sense. I didn't have an opinion, and I never got to have the other side of the negotiation. It was always very one-sided. The other person was always like, no, we're doing it my way. And I kept saying, okay, all right, next time we'll do it my way, but there never was a next time. And for the first time in my life, I realized that I had learned to be not passive is the right term, but I had learned to be maybe not standing up for myself or something like that. And so I love the fact that we were able to learn not to argue, but I think the key in our home was the negotiation, because if I did it my way this time, next time we do it your way. And the next time they'd say, hey, we did it your way last time. Oh, that's right. And so to remember back and forth that it's a two-way street, because the negotiation of only one side winning, it was not a winning combination. And I ended up walking away from that relationship just for the very first time in my life. Looking at it was like, this is not healthy at all. And if I stand up for myself, I just get smashed with a battery of verbal abuse. And I'm like, this is not what I prefer. And I ended up walking away from the relationship saying, you know what? No more. We're not doing this. I'm not doing this. So great skills to learn as a kid.
And it helps if you know what your own belief system is. A lot of us sort of drift through life without really clearly defining what our belief system is and how we want to live our lives and how we want to interact with people and how we want to express all of the different traits and characteristics that a person has. So the more that we can identify those and optimize them, the happier we're going to be, the more productive we're going to be.
When you talk about communication, the next concept here is teach your children to cooperate and share with others. That goes right in alignment with the clarification of communication and then being willing to negotiate those terms. Tell us more about sharing.
Well, you know, kids are really funny. There can be 100 things, and a kid will pick something out of that 100 things, and all of a sudden everybody else wants that same thing. It's true. You have to teach people that everyone can, as we said before, everyone can have a turn. Everyone can utilize things. I think it's important that children have their own things and they say, this is mine, but I need to learn to share this with other people. And sometimes you share it with people that will break it or not take care of it. Mm-hmm. And so you need to learn to draw the line. You say, if you take my thing, you need to take care of it. And I want it back in good shape. And sharing our things is really important. And so we need to learn to do that.
The sharing things with going back to the responsibility that you were talking about a minute before and leaving things better than you found it or as well as you found it, I think also goes with sharing things. I know that as I've borrowed things from people, I always tried to return it in the equivalent or better condition than I found it in. And in the rare event that I'm borrowing something and it breaks, to replace that item before I give it back. And I've found myself that has been a lesson that served me really well through my cleaning career, where if I was at a customer's house and I broke something accidentally, to always take responsibility and replace that item so that I wasn't leaving with a degradation of their stuff and or my relationship with them and or my character. And so that was a really interesting lesson to make sure that you leave stuff better. And then also when you're sharing it, make sure that you return it in the condition you found it in.
Yeah, and as you get older, the things that you borrow will get bigger. Like you borrow someone's automobile, you return the automobile clean and full of gas. You take responsibility for the things that you borrow. And like you say, it's something that you learn as a child, and you grow with the concept, and things that you borrow get bigger or whatever. Yeah, take care of things, replace things, leave it better than you found it.
I love that. Wow. You've got another one here that says, have daily personal and family devotions. Tell us about the devotions and why that's important as a leader of a family.
Well, as I say, the connection with the divine is really the most important. It's that basic fundamental layer that you need to have. And as a person, we need to have our own personal time, and we need to teach that to our children. And we do that by setting a time aside where you read scripture, where you memorize scripture, where you interact with the divine. You have family prayers, you have personal prayers. Uh, yeah, it's just a way of living that keeps you connected all of the time. And our lives are so busy that that's sort of the first thing that we put aside that's not really demanding in our scheduling. Yeah, we look at work, we look at things we have to do, we're behind on our schedules, whatever. So I put my devotion time aside to do all of this other busy stuff. And just the opposite should be the rule. If you don't take the time to pray and to meditate and have your own devotion, then you're not prepared to go out into the world and do all of these other things, because that's where you find your peace, your inner peace, your tranquility, your fortitude, your perspectives and your awareness of things. That's all a spiritual reality. So, yeah, those are some of the most important things that we do. And it's interesting, in my family, people have really gone in a lot of different directions. But I find that people in their own way are connecting with the divine and ordering their life in a way that is really meaningful. We're not all of the same denomination or the same uh, spiritual practice, but there's a lot of insight. I talk to all of the children probably more than you children talk to each other. And so I have more of an insight into what people are really processing and how they process things. And I'm relatively pleased with most attempts of the children to have that spiritual dynamic and that connection with the divine. They do it in their own way. Some do it very, very differently than I would do it. But there you have your freedom and your own belief system and expressing yourself. Everyone has to walk that lonesome valley themselves. You have to be true to yourself. You have to look inside your own heart. You need to make sure that you're connected with the divine in the way that you prefer to do it. You can't legislate that to someone.
Mm-hmm.
You can teach truths, but you can't learn for others. They have to learn for themselves. So,
And I'm glad that you brought that up because I think there's wisdom in the fact that you mention if you are inspired and you are meditating and you are taking that devotion for yourself in the morning, you're in a better position then to take care of your family and the people around you that you love. And I'm going to extend that to say your business and your employees and everybody that you come in contact with, your customers and whoever. And I think that if we don't take that time in the morning to first tune in with, like you say, a higher frequency or a higher vibration and really get in alignment with our true self and our goals, I think that it's really easy to say things like, oh, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. And then we're tripped up all day. Things are not going right. They're not going smoothly. And we're kind of bumbling throughout the day, just drifting aimlessly from place A to place B in hopes that something is going to miraculously work out. And usually I find it doesn't. I usually find that if you'll stop and you'll get your acts together, if you will, in the morning, that really makes a wide awakening for the whole day.
Oh, absolutely.
All righty, our next one. Having a child makes you parent, like having a piano makes you a pianist. I love that. I love that thought. Share with me your ideas on that.
Well, it applies to just about everything. When you get married, you're not given a manual usually. And some people actually go to counseling and they have mentors and they learn about marriage before they get married. But that's usually not the case. People will fall in love and get married knowing very little about the other person. What happens is that our assumption of what the other person is falls in love with their assumption of who they think we are. And we have two assumptions that fall in love and get married. And that never works out ideally. And so you really need to have a way of interacting with people and communicating with people that makes it really, really meaningful. So
Being a parent, though, I'm guessing when you become a parent, there are a lot of responsibilities that you don't know right up front and that you have to learn those as you go. And I'm thinking with practice makes perfect.
Well, you don't get the manual for being a parent either. There are some really good, helpful books around, and there are people who give seminars, and if you put the effort into it, there are a lot of resources to teach you how to be a good parent. Although there are a lot of different ideas on how to parent, on how to discipline, and you have to kind of find your own way. What I found was that all of the children were different, and you had to discipline them differently. You had to teach them differently. And that was really difficult because there were so many all at one time that sometimes I had to do just something that would be down the middle of the road that would apply to most people, But
How did you discover the different learning styles for each of those children? Let's say that you stumble upon a children that's not learning the way the other kids learn, or they are not fairly disciplined the way another child is disciplined.
Well, it's a matter of awareness. If you're teaching a principle, there's some people who get it and some people who don't. And so if someone is not getting something, you have to be creative and figure out another way to present the idea or the concept so that they can understand it. Some people have to do things themselves to learn how to do it. And other people, you can just tell them. And other people can just observe something and learn the lesson. So it's just being aware of how children are processing the information. And you need to take notes. We talked about keeping a journal. That would be really, really helpful. In my case, if you had all of these children and they were all learning different ways, it would be nice to have notes to refer to sometimes. But yeah, you have to approach it on an individual basis and just work closely enough with the child that you're aware of what they're experiencing. Some parents send their children off to like public school, and they don't really know what happens at school or what the child is learning or how they're learning. They can have all kinds of problems that would that would not optimize their learning. And you would not be aware of that unless you sat down with the child on your own time and asked, what did you learn in school today? We learned about history. What did you learn about history? And you interact with the child and you find out what's going on and what they learned, what they didn't learn. How are they doing with their homework? Do they bring homework home? Maybe they learn so quickly that they don't need to bring homework home. You just need to be aware of all of those things and act accordingly.
That's an amazing thought. I'm glad that you explained that to us. And I love the fact that expressing yourself that way so that the child will learn in a way that's meaningful to them also is a really interesting thought. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. There's another one here.
Let me add one other comment to that. I believe that as a parent, you are responsible for the education of your child. I don't think you can pawn that off on a school teacher or a Sunday school teacher or friends or neighbors or anyone else. You have the prime responsibility to make certain that your child is educated properly according to your belief system. And it's just a responsibility of parenthood. You're responsible for the child, their moral decisions, their educational decisions, their social decisions, when they're young, even their religious decisions. You teach them how to do things and you show by your example how to do things. You can't have a rule for the children to follow and you don't follow it yourself. So, yeah, that's how you teach children.
I would like to add to that as well. I think that as an adult of any parent, I think it's also your responsibility to continue your own education. So if you grew up and there were things that you didn't learn, because you're not going to learn everything there is to know about life just living at home. When you leave home, the learning doesn't stop. When you graduate from high school, the learning doesn't stop. When you graduate from college, the learning doesn't stop. And I think that's one of the things that I learned from you, is that by being homeschooled, there was never a graduation. We did not graduate from learning. Okay, you're done learning. Goodbye. Go have a good life. It was like continually keep learning and continually keep, admitting new ideas and philosophies to your life that will enhance the quality of your life and the people around you and the things that you are trying to achieve. And as a result of that, I think every day has been a learning lesson for me where I keep trying to learn more things and then apply them as I learn them in my life. And so even though you might teach me lots of things while I'm a child and I grow up, when I move out on my own, I need to continue that by teaching myself and going and learning the information that is available to all of us in different, places and resources.
Yeah, and we did that when we organized our homeschool. We actually organized it as a homeschool. It was called the Good Shepherd Academy. And then I had a sort of an advanced school called Sherith. And I got into a lot of things like energy and the flower of life and the meridians for healing and Eastern kinds of medicine and working with energy and breathing techniques and all of those things. We moved around a lot as a family. And so there were some of the children who didn't learn all of those things, but that school is still in operation today. And we're still learning new things every day. We're learning new gardening tips. We're learning scientific things. We're learning like over unit energy and how to be self-sufficient, self-sustaining, how to do all kinds of things. We have classes really at home every day we find new recipes on the internet. And so we learn how to make our food tastier and maybe more nutritious. We're concerned about that. We learn all kinds of do-it-yourself things on how to do things, little tips on plumbing and all different kinds of things. So yeah, the learning never stops. And we have so much available today that was not available readily in in our younger days. The YouTube videos and all the do-it-yourself things that are available just at the push of a button. It's just amazing. And AI has brought a whole new world into things. If I want to grow the optimal onion, I can go to AI and say, how do you grow the optimal onion? And there's the information just at your fingertips with the push of a button. So we live in a world today that is just amazing as far as the resources available to us to learn and to expand in every direction of our interest.
Ah, I love that. That's awesome. That takes us to the next insight where you say every family should have its own constitution defined, purpose and functions clearly outlined. Every family should have its own constitution, defined purpose, and functions clearly outlined. What is a family constitution?
Well, right in the early years of our family, I sat down and I actually drew up a constitution. I realized that our family was actually a kingdom, and a kingdom incorporates everything. It incorporates education, the training of children, their schooling, their social interactions, their religious. Just every facet of a kingdom is what a family is. And so, if you can clearly define that for yourself, this is what my family is. This is what I want it to be. This would be my ideal family. These are the principles that we would implement in our home. These are the principles that we teach our children. The more that you can do that and have it very crystal clear, the more chance you have to be successful. If you're just flying by the seat of your pants and your kids are running wild and your house is messy and disorganized, just on and on and on. Some people don't know how to budget their money. Their resources just flow in and out, and at the end of the month, they're scrambling to keep up. I had a neighbor. We burned firewood in the wintertime, and he had counted his logs that he had left. And it's winter. It was some years it's 20 below zero where we live. He had counted out each day of the year and how many logs he could burn on that day to have logs left at the end of winter when spring was warm enough that he wouldn't have to burn his fire. And so he could only burn so many logs a day. And people have such different ways of approaching life. I like to cut a lot of firewood and just, if it's cold, I throw wood on the fire. I don't like to worry about things like that. So we need to learn to plan and budget and do all kinds of things as a family. The family is a kingdom. And so write it down and review it. We had family councils. A lot of the decisions that we made were made as a family. The parents didn't just tell everybody how to do everything. We would say, what would you like to do today? Let's go have a ball game. Okay, well, let's go play ball. And the family could put their input into what the family did and how it was organized. What job would you like this week? We didn't just assign jobs to people. We asked people what they wanted to do, and then we would rotate the jobs, and people learned how to do that. Yeah, if you don't know what your family is and how it's constructed, nobody else will. So, yeah, have a constitution or something written out. This is who we are, and this is how we operate.
You know, it's really weird that people would not have a family constitution for their families because every business has a business plan. If you're going to go on a trip, there's a roadmap. I mean, if we don't know where we are and we don't know where we're headed, we'll never know if we get there. And I think that's the equivalent of a family constitution. If people don't know what the rules are, they certainly can't live by those rules. And nobody in the family will know if the objective of the family or the rules have been achieved. So I love the fact that you put it in writing and that it was very clear so that people would know what exactly it is that we're doing here and how we're supposed to participate and how we know if we've been successful at it.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good takeaway from our meeting today. Well, what am I going to do this week? Organize your family this week. Do it in a way that you've never done before. Establish that actually these are the rules of my family. This is when we have family councils. This is why we're organizing as a family. These are the social parameters. This is how we treat people. Just put it all down in black and white, and then you can refer to it. The kids can read it. They know exactly where you're going. Yeah, it really helps.
I
And
love
then,
that.
and one other just final thought today. There's something that you can do today, something you can do this week that will make your family a better family. And if you can get up every day and just say, what can I do today to make my family a better family? Write it down. That's your goal for the day. And do something out of the ordinary to make your family a better family. It will have its rewards.
That goes back to the if you are contributing something as part of a community, then everybody wins. So I absolutely love that. Oh, good stuff. All right, today we are reading from the Insights and Wisdom of Omuugn. This is volume 1 of volume 2. They're both available online. You can get them now. And I want to thank Omuugn for joining us and for unpacking these insights and wisdom so that we can not only take what you have learned, but that we can learn them ourselves and we can implement them into our lives. Thanks, you guys, for today. And thank you for all of you that have joined us. I appreciate you guys participating in our weekly unpacking here of the insights and wisdom of Omuugn. And we will see you same time, same place next week. In the meantime, learn to be the best version of your